Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Thank you to the live audience for joining me today and anybody joining us on Podcast Addict, Podbean, or YouTube. Today we're going to talk about Bushido and Budo, which are basically two words for the same thing. Shush, cat wants to go outside. And basically this is the code of the samurai, the way of the warrior. It's a lifestyle, it's an ethics code, an honor code, and a way of life that the samurai followed, and you can also follow today in some ways, well, in all ways. So we're going to talk about that because I'm quite interested in it. And then before we get started, we're the Roundtable Discord server. Find us by Googling Roundtable Discord. You can go to Discord and search politics or conspiracy theories. You'll find us at the top, the charging white knight on the black background. And our website is roundtablediscord.com. Okay, so usually we have guests or we do a discussion. Today is a little bit different in that I am going to basically, gosh, Jesus, he's such a monster. Basically, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a talk here, and then after that we'll have an open discussion. If anyone wants to ask questions or whatever, they can. So basically, Budo is the samurai ethics code that they developed during, I guess, feudal Japan. And again, I'm not a historian. I don't know a ton about samurai or their, historical background. They'd be surprised with more. So I'm really just going to talk about what Bushido practically speaking is, how you can actually live what it actually means. Follow that as your way of life. And obviously, I'm not an expert in this, nor am I like an exemplar of it. Obviously, fall completely short of being like a warrior in the sense that these people would have been, or people are today, but it's an aspiration, and it's at least a framework and a structure for living your life. But I don't claim to be living this life, but it is my goal, and it is how I'm understanding life now. So I guess the background I want to give is I was born and raised Christian, Mennonite community, church, Sunday school, Bible study, all that religious stuff, and very, very religious upbringing, and that was what was presented to me as how to understand the world, how to live, how to be a good person, how to navigate your decision-making. It was all based in basically the Bible, religious education, and Jesus, and that kind of thing. Sin, good and evil, heaven and hell, Jesus and the devil. That was sort of what was given to me in a book called the Bible. And I studied it, and I read the whole Bible, and I got baptized, and I'm still a Christian today. However, I would say that Christianity did not give me what I needed to be a good man, to be a strong man, to succeed in life. It really was not a very functional way for this. It wasn't, although it can be an addition to it, it was not a substitute for
really bad.
Yeah, I asked everybody before to tell me, so you should automatically tell me.
Yeah. I thought it was going to get better, but it just got worse and worse progressively. I guess we'll just take a little break until
well, no, okay. So before I started the podcast, I told everybody that I would inevitably robot, and as soon as I did, automatically tell me. So don't wait. And then I just said either just wait a second, I'll be right back, or just talk without me until I return. So I'm assuming my connection is fine now. And again, as soon as I start roboting, just tell me. I reset, I'm back. But don't wait and don't not tell me. That's what I ask before every podcast. So anyway, and that goes for everybody, not just you. So I would just say that Christianity doesn't really work. It doesn't really give people what they need. You can be loving and compassionate and all that, but it's not giving you the structure you need. So that being said, I also studied all different religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, you studied Islam, all different religions. I studied them. I didn't really find in them what you need either, except Buddhism has a lot of good stuff. And I'm not saying they don't have good things, but anyways, eventually I found Budo Bushido, and long before I found or even knew about Budo Bushido, I got into martial arts. So I started in judo when I was about maybe 14 years old, under an Egyptian Olympian, and started training judo. And before that I did taekwondo, Krav Maga, and Shito Ryu, but judo was the first one that I was really got serious about. And I started competing, and I didn't want to compete, but my coach, and she was a warrior, straight up fucking warrior from Egypt, Olympic medalist, she forced me to compete, and I really was not, and not a competitive kind of person, really. A very laid back, chill, easygoing person. I was quite shy and so forth when I was a kid. I didn't want to compete. but she forced me to, and I did really well looking back on it. And I loved judo and got into it and continued with that. And then eventually I competed provincially and interprovincially. And then I eventually did that for years and won a bunch of medals and shit. And then I went to MMA. And so I got into Canadian Fighting Center, started training with a world champion Muay Thai guy, was my striking coach, really good black belt was my jiu-jitsu coach. That's when I learned wrestling. I love wrestling. So maybe my favorite martial art might be wrestling. Kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, judo, all of that. And MMA then was my true love or whatever. And MMA is literally the greatest of things, greatest sport ever exists. And it's simply the combination of all the most functional parts of all martial arts that work together in the ultimate fighting style, which is really, everyone has their own style of MMA, but MMA includes everything that works from every martial art that works. There's nothing that, is excluded. So in my opinion, it's the true and perfect form of unarmed combat. It's what we call mixed martial arts. And it's amazing. But again, nobody at that point had said anything to me about Budo or Bushido. It's just combat techniques and strength and conditioning, competition and training. So anyways, after my divorce, as a way to cope with the grief, I went to Montreal, and I lived at TriStar, which is, in my opinion, the best mixed martial arts gym in the world. And my coach there was a guy named Firas Zahabi, and Firas Zahabi is considered a genius, not just at fighting, but like an actual genius. He's got, I think, a PhD in philosophy, and they call it philosophy because he's Firas Zahabi, and he's a philosophy, and he's got the philosophy of fighting, so they call it philosophy. And you can watch it on YouTube. I'll post it later. You can watch documentaries about TriStar. It's a legendary gym, right? And even before that, at CFC, and this is just sort of the backstory to like this making sense of what I'm trying to say here. Before that, I was under Rufus Sport, and the head of that was Duke Rufus, who's Tyron Woodley's coach, the UFC champion. And I got to work with Duke Rufus. I got to do clinics with him. So I actually really got to train with two of the best coaches in the world, Duke Rufus from Rufus Sport and Firas Zahabi from TriStar. And I lived there in the dorms for quite a while. Not as long as I should have, but and I just, wake up in the fighter dorms. You're living with UFC fighters and other aspiring fighters from around the world, and all you do is train. Everything's attached. There's a yoga studio, weightlifting gyms, and they have every possible kind of combat class there that's functional. And they have cages, so you can actually fight and spar in the cages like a UFC fight. And I got to spar with Elias Theodorou. I got to work with Eric Spicely. Got to meet Aubin Saint-Mercier. I actually met Vitor Belfort. I didn't get to introduce myself or shake his hand, but I literally walked right past him. Again, you guys might not know these people, or you may, but these are legends, especially Vitor Belfort. I was actually under the same roof training with George St. Pierre, greatest living Canadian, and obviously a hero to every Canadian, and one of the greatest fighters of all time, right? Top 4 of all time. And I didn't get to work with him, obviously, but he was there training at the same time. And I lived with a guy named Mirsad Bektik, who was a Bosnian. Oh, shit, I hope he's Bosnian. I didn't get a nationality wrong. There's a lot of bad blood there. I'm sorry if you're not Bosnian. I'm pretty sure he is, but hopefully those weren't the people he ran away from. Anyways, he had a history with them, or they did with him. Anyways, good Lord. We'll cut that part out maybe. But, yeah, so I got to see how he ate and get to know them and live with them and train with them and see how they get drug tested by USADA and all that. And so I got pretty deep into fighting, and I still fight in jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, through Gracie Humeda and Renzo Gracie. And I love it, man. I love it all. It's a lifestyle. But this has all been formulated, essentially. This lifestyle has been formulated as Bushido Budo. They mean the same thing. So Bushi means samurai or fighter, and warrior, and Budo means way, or Do means way. So basically we're going to break down how this actually works. So I conceive it in my own way. I believe that the code of all ethics is called benevolence. What this essentially means is that if you have good intentions to someone and you want to do good, if you're trying to help, if you're trying to be loving and good, then that is a good action. Anything motivated from that is good, and that's called benevolence. Benevolence means compassion. It means you want the happiness and well-being of other beings. And this is therefore good. So good is benevolence, well-meaning, kindness, compassion, right? It's pretty simple. The opposite of this, of course, is malevolence, which means wishing harm on other beings, which is sadism, right? You take pleasure in the pain of others is sadism, whereas compassion is you take pleasure in the happiness of others. So these are the two polarities of morality. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. So when you take pleasure in the happiness of others, you are compassionate and benevolent and therefore good. When you take pleasure in the pain of others, you are sadistic and malevolent and therefore evil. This is really all good and evil is. It is this simple, and it's black and white in the sense that malevolence is evil, benevolence is good, right? So if you feed a puppy, good. If you kick a puppy, bad. Pretty simple. Now, Budo and Bushido is what comes after this basic moral principle. It's how do you actually actualize this and live your life? So essentially, Budo Bushido is honor, right? The way of the warrior is the way of honor, right? But then what is honor? Like what really is honor? Well, first of all, honor is a martial code in particular. So this is sort of the difference. There isn't really a code of honor in Christianity, for example, because Christianity is not a warrior religion, at least not the way it's been formulated. And honor pertains to warriors in particular. And technically, a martial artist is a warrior. If you look up the word warrior, it will say a skilled soldier or fighter. So technically, a mixed martial artist or a fighter who is skilled is a warrior, just like a soldier is. And that's why the code of Budo works for soldiers and it works for warriors. Now, you don't need to be a martial artist. You don't need to be a martial artist or a soldier to incorporate and follow Budo. But essentially, that's who it's for. It's the way of the warrior. So honor essentially is, I understand it as what's called your jacket. Now, if you're a police officer, you have a jacket, and this is your uniform that's given to you when you join the force, and you will wear it for your duration of your time as a cop, and anything bad you do will be pinned on your jacket. In other words, it's your reputation, it's your record, it's your history, it's how people see you, it's how people think of you, and it's the respect that you can or cannot legitimately claim for yourself. So that's your jacket. And we have the same thing in martial arts. So when I would join judo, I was given a gi, right? And it's like a heavy garment. The first one I had was probably white, but I've usually worn white and blue gis. And now I also have a black gi. And again, thanks for letting me get this all out. This is just my thoughts and things I wanted to articulate. So anyways, you get your blue gi or your white gi, and then that becomes essentially your jacket. Because you have a reputation in your gym, you have a reputation with your coach, your team and your gym has a reputation with all other teams and gyms, which come from lineages that go all the way back, teacher to student, to the patriarchs of these styles of fighting. So, for example, I currently train under Renzo Gracie, so then you can literally go up the lineage to the Gracie family, and whichever member of it is the patriarch of this school, right? So these long histories to these gyms, and every single fighter who fights under that is contributing to the honor or dishonor of that gym. So if I fuck up or behave in a bad way, it's not just impinging my own honor, but it's actually impinging the honor of my gym and my lineage, right? So I'm actually accountable to my coach, all my training partners, and the whole affiliate, right? Because not my gym isn't just here; it's like a global thing. They're all over the world, and so we're all part of these different families and teams. So, in other words, your honor is that. So you have to conduct yourself with honor. And essentially, you keep your back straight, you keep your shoulders up, you keep your head up, etc. You carry yourself like a man is the idea. And what does that really mean? So honor then breaks down into three things, essentially, for me. Again, tell me if I'm roboting. Loyalty, respect, and honesty. That's basically it. So honor is made up of loyalty, respect, and honesty. So the reason loyalty is important, well, you can't betray your coach, you can't betray your training partners, you can't betray your friends, you can't betray your family. You have to, if you're a warrior, you have to be trustworthy to serve your master as long as your master is an honorable person himself. Betrayal is treason. Treason is punishable by death in a martial code, right? So loyalty is very important. Loyalty to your brothers in arms, loyalty to your family, to whoever you serve. Your shogun if you're a samurai, your emperor if you're a shogun. You always have to serve someone essentially, legitimately. And there's hierarchies, right? So I have a coach, and above that there's all the different belt levels. And that's where respect comes in. You show respect at every level. You show respect from the first time you step on the mat. In judo, you bow when you step into the room. You bow when you step onto the mat. You bow when you approach your opponent. You step to the inner circle. You bow after the fight, right? So it's all bow, bow, bow. And even now I bow, even though that's not the culture in jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, we do the hand slap and the fist bump. But I still bow as well, especially if I'm fighting anyone of higher level, and definitely if I ever fight a brown or black belt, I'll always bow before and after, especially if they're older. So you show respect not only to higher belts, but to lower belts. You show respect to everybody. You also essentially demand respect. in the sense that any display of disrespect towards you would then have to be answered in a fairly direct way. So the difference between being like normal person and in the martial code is a normal person can have the privilege of allowing disrespect to go unanswered. But if you have a jacket, whether as a police officer, a soldier, or a martial artist, you can't do that. So in other words, if somebody disrespects you, right, then you would have to confront them about it, point out the disrespect, and demand that they, apologize or make amends or whatever the situation demands. And ultimately, if they refuse to do that, you would have to be willing and able to use some amount of force to respond to the situation. So, for example, if I was in my martial arts gym and someone came into the gym who was not one of the members of our team, or even was, and was wearing their shoes, right? Well, you're not allowed to wear shoes into the gym. You have to take them off. And let's say, he stepped onto the mat with the shoes on. You would then obviously have to say, what are you doing? Get off. You can't wear those shoes in here, right? But if for some reason he refused, you would then have to physically grab him and essentially grapple him and throw him out of the gym physically. And then, of course, if he fought, well, you'd probably have to fight back. And you'd probably beat him up or whatever. And the same thing, if someone spit on the mat, spit on you, tried to, whatever. Now, you don't use violence, like the whole thing is very controlled and this never happens. But the point is, same with a cop, right? If you ever go up to a cop and, call him a name or push him or anything, spit at him, he's going to deal with you. He can't allow that respect to go unanswered. The reason why is because he is a representative not only of himself, but of the police force that he's part of, the unit that he's part of. His uniform represents all other cops, and if he allows you to disrespect him, then he's allowing you then to disrespect other people, and he needs to preserve the reputation of his police force as something you can't fuck with, and that is worthy of respect. So that's why these people, people go, why are cops so full of themselves, or why are, whatever. It's not even that they're full of themselves. They are doing it because of their brothers in arms that they need you to respect, right? So if they allow you to call them a pig, then you're going to call everyone else a pig, and then, whatever. Now, I'm not a cop, but I train with cops, and I train with soldiers, and I train with prison guards in the service classes or whatever. And so that's the element of respect. You show respect. You also have to be shown respect. And again, respect is not like people giving you praise or worshiping you or anything like that. It means they can't impinge on the honor of you or your gym or your team. They have to obey things. So even in my gym, I wasn't allowed to wear a black gi. I made the mistake. I tried to go in there wearing a black gi. I got basically thrown out because no black gis allowed in that gym at that time. Now I can wear black gi because I'm under Henzo, but at the time I couldn't. So anyways, that's the element of respect coming from honor. We already talked about loyalty. We'll touch on honesty. So why is honesty so important? Well, because in a martial code, they say your honor is your life, right? And they also say your word is your bond. And so essentially your word is your honor. So what this means is if I tell you something, I'll tell you one reason why you can't lie, right? So let's say I told you a lie about myself. Let's say I told you I was a black belt. Well, I'm not a black belt. But let's say for some reason I told you that I was. And then let's say inevitably you find out I'm not a black belt. Well, essentially this one little lie that I've told you, maybe to boost my ego or make myself look good, would then destroy my entire credibility forever on all matters with every person, right? Because as soon as well, Shogun lied about having a black belt. You didn't really have one. Why would you believe me about anything else? Then you wouldn't believe I have a master's degree. You wouldn't believe I'm 6'3". You wouldn't believe I'm even doing MMA. Why would you believe anything I say then, right? So that's why lying is never really worth it, because unless you have to do it for some survival reason or whatever, lying for personal advantage is never worth it, because you'll inevitably be caught in your lies. And when you are caught in your lies, you will be completely discredited with all people for all time. And there's no way you can ever get it back, right? How are they ever going to believe you lied one time? How would you ever believe anything you say again? So this is why honor is so important, because imagine I'm a soldier in the field, or rather a samurai on the field, right? And I come up to a guy and I go, listen, I'm hungry. I need you to feed me. I'll come back and I'll pay you tomorrow. If you don't do that, then he's going to go and say, hey, that samurai, Shogun, he never came and paid me. Next time you're hungry in the field, you see a farmer, you ask him for food, he's going to know, I heard about you. You don't pay your debts. Right? So this is why your word is your bond. People have to believe you when you talk, because if they don't, you won't be able to motivate them, you won't be able to lead them, you won't be able to explain things to them or anything, right? So you need that trust, and trust requires honesty. So essentially, it's just that beautifully simple. Benevolence is wanting what is good for people. Honor is carrying yourself like a noble warrior in the honorable way of the warrior. This depends on loyalty to your master, your comrades, your family, right? Your team, your gym, Whatever is your units of responsibility, you must be loyal to them. People have to know that if you're supposed to stand beside them, you will, that if you're supposed to show up for a certain mission, you will, and that you're not going to defect to the other side and be a traitor or betray them, right? So your loyalty cannot be a question. You must show respect to your comrades. You must show respect to other people. You must even show respect to the enemy or to your opponent or competitor. You should show respect to yourself, which is the only part I really struggle with. And then also, you have to be honest. And honesty means not lying. You can not answer a question. You can change the subject. You can even evade a question by, answering it in a way that does not require dishonesty, but may not answer the information you didn't want to give away. But you can't actually lie. If you lie and you consciously tell a lie, it will compromise your honor, your self-respect, the respect other people have for you, and their trust in your loyalty. So therefore, honesty is important for the warrior code as well. So essentially that's it. That's how I understand Bushido. And it's even more simple than the actual system. So before I finish it, I want to go over the formal system, which is a little different, a little more involved than mine. That's how I look at it. It's even simple. But just let me...
Start the robot dog.
Okay, 1 second, please.
It's a good way of life, dude.
Can you guys hear me now?
You sound clear.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So now that I've gone over my own understanding, Bushido, right, the way of the warrior, is actually composed of 7 virtues, right? So I gave you benevolence, honor, loyalty, honesty, and respect, which is 5 principles. I'm now going to tell you the traditional 7 virtues of Bushido. The first is called Gi, means integrity. Be acutely honest throughout your dealings with all people. Believe in justice not from other people, but from yourself. To the true warrior, all points of view are deeply considered regarding honesty, justice, and integrity. Warriors make a full commitment to their decisions. Rei, respect. True warriors have no reason to be cruel. They do not need to prove their strength. Warriors are courteous even to their enemies. Warriors are not only respected for their strength in battle, but also by their dealings with others. The true strength of the warrior becomes apparent during difficult times. You, heroic courage. Hiding like a turtle in a shell is not living at all. A true warrior must have heroic courage. It is absolutely risky. It is living life completely, fully, and wonderfully. Heroic courage is not blind. It is intelligent and strong. Meo, honor. Warriors have only one judge of honor and character, and this is themselves. Decisions they make and how these decisions are carried out is a reflection of whom they truly are. You cannot hide from yourself. Jin, compassion. Through intense training and hard work, the true warrior becomes quick and strong. They are not as most people. They develop power that must be used for good. They have compassion. They help their fellow man at every opportunity. If an opportunity does not arise, they go out of their way to find one. Makoto, honesty and sincerity. When warriors say that they will perform an action, it is good as done. Nothing will stop them from completing what they say they will do. They do not have to give their word. They do not have to promise. Speaking and doing are the same action. Chu, duty and loyalty. Warriors are responsible for everything that they have done and everything that they have said, and all of the consequences that follow. They are immensely loyal to all those in their care. To everyone that they are responsible for, they remain fiercely true. So those are the 7 principles of Bushido. Integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty and sincerity, duty and loyalty. So that essentially is all you need to know really to understand everything about Budo and Bushido. And this is kind of amazing, right? Because this code that I've just given here that I understand, I understand this concept pretty well, and it's livable and it's powerful and it works. I read the Bible. That thing took months and months to read, and it doesn't, and again, it's not a competition between Budo, Bushido, and Christianity in the Bible, but I'm just saying the clarity, the conciseness of this system is remarkable. It only takes half an hour to understand everything there is to understand about it. Obviously, you have to apply it and think about it, meditate on it, and try and live it in a discipline. And the term that isn't used here is discipline, right? But really discipline is got to be considered one of these principles. because all of this requires discipline, training, fighting, competing, and following these codes. It's all about discipline, and if you don't have discipline, it's very hard to follow these paths properly, which is why I have struggled, because I have lost my discipline in the last few years, but now I'm getting it back. So the point is, you can be a Christian as well, and many fighters and warriors are. In fact, they say there's no atheists in foxholes. You think at Mark Hunt, every time he knocks a dude out and walk away, KO. Thank you, Jesus. So, there's a lot of overlap between warriors and faith, and we're doing the Holy Warrior series in the Church of Camelot, roundtable Bible study thing. We talked about the armor of God. Sir Dougleton read a Bible study on this. So, this fits in well. And I always say my favorite Bible verse, right? Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle, right? That is a verse from the Bible. It's my favorite Bible verse. You also have, wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. And again, what this is telling you is that, yes, wisdom is more important than being a warrior per se, but a sinner can destroy good things like people or holy things or families or whatever, just through murder and evil. So the only thing that can stop that is what's being implied in this verse, right? It says, wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Well, then it's referring you back linguistically to the first part of the phrase, which says weapons of war. So what it's telling you here is you need weapons of war so that you can kill sinners to defend what is good, which they would otherwise destroy. And you also have in the Bible, the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is a man of war. Okay, so this is a verse also in the Bible. So we're told the Lord is a warrior. He trains our hands for battle and our fingers for war, and that we need weapons of war because sinners destroy much that is good. And also Jesus said to his disciples and his followers, he who has no sword, let him sell his cloak and buy one. It's a literal verse, despite what Soldiver will tell you. It's not an allegory. He's telling his followers to sell their cloaks or whatever they need to sell to obtain the necessary currency to purchase swords, which are weapons of war. They have only one purpose, which is to fight and to kill. So this verse alone lets you know that Jesus was not averse to self-defense, and in fact, he required it of his early church. And obviously, if there were not warriors in the Christian cause, there would be no Christian faith today. They would have been subsumed by Islam and jihad, and the only reason that there are still Christians and Bibles and a part of the world that is Christian is because of the people who fought to defend that faith, in the exact same way that if someone kicks your door down, your wife and children will die if you do not kill that man. So obviously your responsibility as a father and as a husband and as a good person and as a Christian and in every way is to kill whoever you need to kill to defend that which is good, if that is what must be done. And not to sound too comic booky, but it is only the strong who can do this, and therefore it is the strong who must do this. So Spider-Man, great power comes with great responsibility. I mean, realistically, the ability to kill someone with your bare hands fairly easily is a great power, and so you cannot be undisciplined, because if you are undisciplined but you're a fighter, you might end up killing someone, and then you would be the bad guy. And the same goes for soldiers. If they lose their discipline, they might shoot a child or a woman or something, and all of a sudden they're the bad guy. So if you don't want to be the bad guy, you better get a hold of yourself, and that's what I'm realizing. I got to get a hold of myself. So that's why Budo is important. That's why Bushido is important. It doesn't conflict with Christianity. You don't need to be a Christian to follow it either. It has nothing to do with God, right? There's no reference to God in Bushido or Budo. There's no prayer. There's no superstition. There's no magic. There's no heaven. There's no hell. There's just you, your life, and a way to live it so that you can have honor and people will put respect on your name and they will trust your word and you will be able to carry yourself like a man and like a warrior. And then also you'll be able to defend yourself and you'll be able to defend the innocent. You'll be able to defend your family, maybe even society itself from threats, external and internal. And also the reward of this is it's just incredibly gratifying. And the thing is, men in particular, I can't speak for women, are hardwired for combat. It's in our DNA. There's only a few things that are hardwired in our DNA. Fucking, fighting, and fishing, so to speak, by which I mean fucking, fighting, and hunting. These three things are hardwired into us, right? These are genetic, sociobiological, evolutionary, biological impulses are to eat, to mate, female mate, to have kids. Defeat.
You're a robot again, bud. And the 3 F's is fighting, feeding, and fucking.
What are we
You guys never heard about this?
You're correct at fighting, feeding, and fucking, but this is slightly different. This is fighting, hunting, and fucking. So just difference being, it's not so much eating, feeding, but it's the act of pursuing game and capturing it. So things, when you do them, millions of years of evolutionary instincts kick in, and you feel alive and active and engaged in a way that no other activity can give you, right? So if you're hunting in the woods and you see a deer and you're crouched down, you got your gun pointed at it, your adrenaline is pumping, your heart is beating, you're keyed in, and if you shoot it and you kill that deer, you get this rush of euphoria. And again, I've never done this. I never fired a gun. I've never killed an animal. But, I know from talking to people and hearing them, you get this incredible rush of elation and euphoria because your evolutionary circuit has rewarded you for achieving that which preserves life, right? It preserves your life, it preserves your family's life, it preserves your children's life, it increases your evolutionary success chances greatly if you're a great hunter. So therefore, you're keyed up to reward yourself with a huge dopamine dump for this. Exact same way that if you manage to get the hot girl at the dance to go home with you and not all the other guys, you're going to get a huge dopamine dump. And if you defeat another man in unarmed combat, you're going to get a huge dopamine dump. And I can tell you from personal experience, someone who has done every different kind of drug, from MDMA to cocaine to alcohol to marijuana to, DMT to everything else in Minecraft, right? Fighting is the best high I've ever had, for sure. Now, specifically winning, like if you win, that's great. If you choke somebody out or win a fight, it feels fucking incredible. You get like elated. You just feel on top of the world. You feel happy. You feel content. You feel exhilarated. You feel strong. You feel powerful. You feel confident. You feel amazing. And it lasts for hours and hours. Even more. If you win like a big tournament or something, you can feel good about that really for the rest of your life. But the actual elation lasts for many hours. And it really is like a drug. And we used to have a debate. I had it a few times in the locker room with other fighters. And we'd debate what's better, sex or fighting. And basically half the people would say sex and half the people would say fighting, or less than half would say fighting. But I always had to be honest. I always thought fighting was a better high than sex. More pleasurable, basically. And the reason why is simply because when you have sex, yeah, it's amazing. It means the girl wanted to give herself to you in that way. But when you win a fight, you had to take that. Nobody gave you anything. And that person tried with all their heart to stop you from doing what you wanted to do, and you were just the better man. You were stronger. You did what you were more skillful. And so because you have to take it, nobody gives you anything. It doesn't require anyone to accept anything from you. You have to force yourself to succeed and force them to lose, right? And there's just something about this that is incredibly rewarding. And that's why, I pursue that like a drug. And when I don't have that, then I fall into actual drugs and alcohol as a substitute. So it can keep people on the right track. And for certain kind of people, it's the only thing that keeps them on that track. There's quite a few people like that. You can see them in the UFC, etc. Basically completely crazy people. And fighting is what keeps them in society, basically. And there's variations on that. I'm not that crazy, but it definitely helps me. So anyways, I basically wanted to elaborate this because it's something that's developed in my mind. The point is, it's a simple code. It is an honorable code. It's a practical code. And I believe if you add my principles of benevolence, even if you don't, it will make you a good person, like morally good. You'll treat people well. You'll treat yourself well, and you'll be strong. People talk about how Christians are kind of sort of weak seeming sometimes, and that may be a false impression, but sometimes it can be true. I grew up in a Mennonite community, and my Mennonites are pacifists, and that's why I'm not a Mennonite. Like, I grew up in that church, I grew up in that community, but they're pacifists. And I'm not a pacifist, because pacifism is just asking for your wife to get raped and your daughters to get killed. That's all pacifism is. Fuck that. If you're a pacifist, what are you telling me? You're not going to fight to defend your family? There's no honor in that whatsoever. So, therefore, everyone should be a warrior, because you have at least your own life to defend, and probably you have at least one other person you care about that you would want to be able to defend. And another thing I realized with my ex, or if even more with a kid, the amount of shit that you invest, like the amount of love and concern that you invest into another human being when you love them, whether they're your wife or your daughter or your son, is enormous, and it's never ending, right? It's all your money goes into them, you feed them, you care for them, you clothe them, you bathe them, you put endless resources, emotional and financial and time, into other people. And any motherfucker can just kill those people in a second. They could just bottle your kid in the head. They could just kick your wife in the throat. They could just stab you on the bus or slit your throat or pull a gun out and blow your brains out. You might never know why. There might not be any reason why, right? So if you believe that, life is peaceful and you don't need to fight and nobody's ever going to hurt you, you're wrong. The only reason anybody gets to live in this world is by killing anybody that tries to kill them. And if there's someone who does that job for you, then you're lucky. So that's all there is to that. But no, violence can happen anytime, anywhere, for any reason or for no reason at all. And, fortunately it's not that common. You don't need to be fearful, but you do need to be able to defend people, because that's my point, right? All that resource, they take it away, and your own life too. They just take your own life away from you, right? You got to think about that. And I've been killed in the sense, right? I know what that's like. In the sense that I've been choked completely unconscious to the point of, basically death. And I'll just tell that story quickly, perhaps, and maybe that's a good place to end. So I was just training in judo, and basically the guy got a nice tight choke on me with the gis. He's choking out the carotid arteries where the blood flows into your brain on both sides, and choking it out nice and tight. And I fought too long, right, which is a rookie mistake. You're too proud. You don't want to tap out. So when I did go to tap out, I actually went unconscious. So my arm was reaching from the tap out, and I went unconscious. So I never tapped out, so he didn't know that I was unconscious. So he was applying this choke really, really tight. And, when you're trying to get a choke and the guy's not tapping, you apply it even tighter. You give everything you got. So he put this nasty, blood choke on me, and I went out, and I couldn't tap out. And so I don't know how long he applied that after I was unconscious, but it only takes about 30 seconds for you to be forever gone. Like, you'll be gone forever. After 30 seconds, you're not coming back. So I don't know how long it was, and I went completely gone into this, clouds. And I kind of remember it as, pink clouds. That's kind of what I remember, and silver, bells, and, this kind of weird place of nothingness but pinkness and cloudiness. And then I just remember hearing a thud, 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 thud. Thud, 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 thud. And I was like, what in the fuck is that noise? That was the first conscious thought that I had again. And it turned out what the sound was my whole body convulsing like a fish. Like I was just seizuring. I was having a seizure, basically. I was convulsing and flopping violently on the mat so that my whole body was slamming on the mat. And I was hearing it, but I couldn't feel anything. And I didn't know who I was, where I was, what I was, when I was, what was, right? I just heard the sound, thud, thud, thud. And then I woke up with my teacher, Shireen, slapping me in the face. Brown Egyptian woman, slapping me in the face, in the cheeks. And I was like, did you hear the bells? Did you hear the bells? And I was like, what? And she's like, did you hear the bells? And I was like, yeah, I heard the bells. And then she smiled. She's like, good job, and picked me up. And so that's essentially what death would be like, because you can kill someone very easily by choking them out with a blood choke. And I was already there, right? I was already gone. So in a way, that's all death would be. And so Miyamoto Musashi said, the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. He said, generally speaking, the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. And I'll do another podcast about Miyamoto Musashi in the Book of Five Rings, which is one of the three great books, being Miyamoto Musashi, the Book of Five Rings, the greatest book of tactics, Sun Tzu, the Art of War, the greatest book of strategy, and Tao Te Ching by Lao Tse, the greatest book of spirituality. And I believe you combine these three books, you have the greatest book ever written, and the manual for a warrior. But and Miyamoto Musashi also said, to win any fight, you must fight as though you were already dead. So basically, that's kind of the goal, is to feel like you're already dead. Because if you feel like you're already dead, you don't fear death at all. And to be honest, I sort of have gotten there because I lost my marriage, I lost my house, I lost all these different things. I did attempt suicide more than once, I think, kind of, not really, but sort of. And whatever, so I was ready to die. And now I have my life back, and everything is good, and I'm happy and healthy and focused on, competition, martial arts, winning medals. I want to win the Open. I want to get a gold medal in gi and no gi in the Open in the spring. So I got to train. I got to be disciplined, all these different things, and can't drink. Got to be focused and on track with Bushido Budo. So I wanted to talk about this to clarify my own thoughts, also to get this out to other people who may or may not find it interesting or useful, also to record a podcast for the content of the server. So thank you very much for just letting me drone on. I usually make these interactive and have a guest, and I don't usually do like lectures like this. And it was a little personal, and to be honest, but I'm always open book with you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that or got something out of it. And thanks very much for listening and being here and being part of this community. I love you guys all very much. Love this community. And now if anyone wants to do an open discussion or just talk, we can. And we'll see if anyone wants to say anything. If so, go ahead.
Thanks, Shogun. That was really good. I really appreciate actually being here now because this is what I've been doing most of my life. This art form of Bushido and the sword arts coming from Japan is something I believe I have an idea of what to talk about to add on to what you just mentioned. So I think a lot of people should know about the Shogun and specifically the art of the sword and what was really going on just a little bit. My history is in karate with Alex Steinberg, who was Chuck Norris's, I guess they were partners and they created a couple dojos. So Chuck Norris was, of course, the guy who worked with Bruce Lee. That was when I was a kid. Later on, I really didn't do martial arts until later on. And I came across Kendo. Now, Kendo is, I guess, a sword art form. It's the way of the sword. And there's a lifestyle of the sword. And as a beginner, there's this process for anybody starting a new martial arts, specifically in Kendo, and you go through stages. And they call it shuhari. Shuhari is where you, it's the obey period. Ha is the digress period, and ri is the separate. So usually obey is when you're a student, you're learning. The detach and the distress period is when you get to a certain rank, where you get to figure out, you know what? You get to notice your own illusions, because the battle in the dojo, and as you get up in rank, you start to realize, I am nothing without my opponent. However, it's always going to be the battle with yourself, and there is no opponent. And over time, when you go through enough competitions, you get to see what your mind is saying to yourself to create your reality. In the deeper parts of it, Shogun, you had mentioned that there is no spiritual praying in Budo, and that's half and half, correct and incorrect, because all dojos in Japan, they bow to the shomen. And so the shomen is the space of the dojo, but it's also to the history of all the teachers before the dojo related to the Shinto shrine. So there is a balance between, the spiritual side of Kendo and Japanese swords and even, any sort of samurai art form, specifically Iaido, because that's what Kendo is. It stems from Iaido, which is the one cut throw. The point about the Shogun and Iaido is that there's two sides of Shogun. You have the good and the bad. The good ones are the soldiers and the masters who protect the beauty of life. And so some people don't understand, like when the sword is released, it actually gives life. More so than what you would imagine that when the sword comes out, it takes life. Yamaoka Teshu is probably one of the greatest swordsmen in the world. It's debatable to say if he's better than Miyamoto Musashi. We can have that conversation, but at least in 1856 to 1880, that his account was actual fact. Like there is an account of him in the shogunate period at Edo, in the Edo period at Tokugawa Castle, where he was the general, and as a general, he negotiated a treatment or an agreement between the opposing sides to save the entire town by not having anybody fight. The people tried to kill him, and nobody could kill him because of how diligent he trained. He lived 45 years and died in meditation. Nobody could kill this guy, and he never, not once, there's not an account of him actually killing anybody. He never killed anybody. So how can you become the greatest swordsman in the world and never kill anybody, it's because of his compassion and his love for beauty. He trained so hard that when you read his account and his story, you'll notice that there was an honor within the battle. And in kendo, sometimes you can actually win by not striking. And so to some people, they don't understand what that means. Like, how can you win without striking? It's because you value your life so much that you know that if you did swing, your life is going to be taken. And as many people that tried to kill Yamaoka Teshu, that's exactly what happened. They knew that whatever they did, they would die. So they would bow out and leave with their lives. And the last thing about Yamaoka Teshu, his whole story and his words is the sword of no swords. And when you go through kendo and you go through iaido and the respect to everything, you are blessed to know that you are the most important thing in the world, and so is everybody else with respect. So that's my thing about kendo, and I've lived it all my life, it seems like.
Thank you, Blue Steel. That was an excellent addition or contribution. I'm glad that you were there to add that to the podcast. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak about Bushido, Budo, martial arts, or anything at this time? Going once, going twice. All right, then.
Do you think the principles of being a warrior applies to other things besides being an actual warrior, like physically, such as, like you said about competition, like when you defeat another person, you earned it. It's one of the greatest pleasures of life. You could even apply that to video games. You did earn it by being better than the other person, literally, while the other person did everything they could to prevent you from doing it. And I guess, it's being a warrior is like something everybody can be and should be and are in a way, because not good ones, but this whole life is a battle for survival, battle against death. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And it must not have been as clear as I hoped to be, because I was trying to be explicit that Bushido is for everybody, right? So it's the way of the warrior, and a warrior technically is defined as a skilled soldier or fighter. However, you're right in the sense that what I was trying to get across, like, I'm not saying this path is only for martial artists and soldiers, right? What I was actually trying to say is this is, in my opinion, is the best way for everybody to live, essentially. I think it's the ultimate philosophy. I think it's the most beneficent, benevolent, clear, forceful, powerful, useful, practical, tangible, understandable system of thinking and action. It doesn't require superstition. It doesn't require God. It doesn't require occultism. It doesn't require magic. It doesn't require anything that doesn't exist. It also doesn't defer anything to the afterlife. It's not like, oh, be good and don't do anything bad and go to heaven or whatever. It's about living in the here and now. And again, these principles absolutely are for everybody to try and follow in their life. Like, not only can you follow these things in your life, you kind of have to. And if you don't, you're going to pay the price, right? So what are they again? The 7 virtues of Bushido: integrity, respect, courage, honor, compassion, honesty and sincerity, duty, and loyalty. Well, let's just look through these real quick and see how they don't only apply to fighters. Integrity, right? If you have your own moral code and you live with integrity to that, you're going to have self-respect. Also, people are going to have trust and respect for you. Respect, well, you have to treat people with respect in your day-to-day life in order for them to respect you. You got to give respect, get respect. Doesn't matter if you're a fighter, if you're in a workplace, if you're in school, you should respect your professor. If you're in a workplace, you should respect your boss and coworkers. You should hold the door open for all ladies, show respect for everybody, right? Courage, well, you got to be brave because life is inherently scary, right? Even if you're not a warrior, you're still facing inevitable death. You could still get disease. You could still have any number of bad things happen to you or your loved ones, so you have to be courageous. Honor is basically behaving in such a way that if people knew the truth about you, you would not be ashamed of yourself. That's basically what honor is if people knew everything about you, your true behavior, your true self, then you wouldn't be ashamed of yourself. That's what it would be to be truly be honorable. You'd be able to walk around naked, leave your diary open, and have your internet history visible for all to see. That would be true honor. I'm far from that, and I'm sure most of us are far from that. But truly honorable person would have no secrets, no need for any secrets, right? Because everything you do is honor, and that honestly is how we try and run this server. Because as we know, it's under scrutiny, and so we conduct it in such a way that when people look into it, there will be only things of honor to it. So it will only bring us more honor. The more people look at it, they won't find anything bad, right? That's how we should try and live our lives. Compassion, you should care about other people. You should want the happiness of other beings. This goes back to benevolence. Compassion is feeding a stray cat, giving a homeless person some money, and caring about your loved ones and other things. Compassion. Honesty and sincerity. Your word is your bond. You have trust and truth. And duty and loyalty in a marriage, to your children, to your family, whatever, right? So in other words, really none of these things are in any way exclusive to fighting. None of them really have to do with fighting at all. So the reason that this is a samurai code is because the psychological and emotional stress and pressure of being someone who kills and dies on a regular basis and lives at the edge of a sword, it's so incredibly high pressure that the only kind of man who can withstand it without cracking and going insane is someone who follows these 7 principles, basically. So the reason why this code is for warriors is simply because warriors need to be such people as this to do what they do without becoming either evil or insane. But it applies to everybody, right? So yes, sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but yes, and like you said, combat has many forms. So you could say a chess match is a metaphor for combat. So it would be a StarCraft game or a video game competition, because all of that is competition, right? And any kind of skilled competition has an analogy to combat. Yeah, so that's kind of. Oh, there's one last thing I want to say while I'm thinking of it. I think it's Miyoda Musashi. He said, "Live every day as though you were on the battlefield, and you will become strong." So in other words, if you're on the battlefield under fire, right, you're going to do everything with discipline, with focus, with concentration. You're going to waste no movements. You're going to waste no time. You're going to eat properly, do everything properly because you're under such incredible pressure of the battlefield. So he said, live every day as though you're on the battlefield, you'll become strong. So live every day as though you're a warrior, you'll become strong, even if you're not in a war, right?
Yeah, thank you for the answer. And one last thing about, fighting and defeating your opponents. I think, one of the things that I do a lot is I try to compete with myself, so it's weird, but I mean, you can defeat yourself. You can beat your own record, you can beat your own timing, you can beat your own, you can improve. Self-improvement is defeating your past self in a way, being better than breaking the records and destroying, in a weird way, the old image. What do you think about that?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I believe it's another Miyamoto Musashi quote. He said, "Today you defeat yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow you defeat stronger men." I think I'm getting the quote wrong, but he says, "Today you defeat yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow you defeat the stronger man." So basically, every day you compete against the person you were the day before, and if you're better than the person than what you did before. So if Shogun today could beat Shogun yesterday in a fight, then I'm just that incrementally better than I was yesterday. And if I keep beating that weaker version of myself, eventually I'll be able to beat the person who is currently stronger than me. And that essentially is the nature of training. And indeed, we have training partners, and we also have sparring partners, competition partners. But in a sense, you are your own opponent and your own training partner always, right? So for me, right, I'm a strong guy, I'm a talented fighter in as far as it goes. But I'm my own enemy, right? It's my drinking, it's the beer, it's the bad diet, it's not getting a good sleep, it's missing training practices, or whatever the case may be. That's what would defeat me ultimately, not an opponent, right? So, and that's the case for basically all fighters. I mean, look at John Jones, the greatest fighter that's ever lived, the greatest unarmed combat sports athlete the world has ever known. But he can't defeat himself, right? So he's, I think, faced more charges now, and He's always in trouble, and he's always losing his belts, and he's always got problems with drugs and alcohol and women, and he's the greatest fighter that ever walked the planet Earth, but he can't beat himself. So this is absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me of those very good points, Weaver.
Oh, thank you.
So it sounds like an innate, intimate relationship with death is beneficial. In other words, you're comfortable with death and you don't react with aversion to death, and being close to it mentally, physically, spiritually, in a manner of speaking, is only going to increase your personal strength.
Very well said. Absolutely correct. Carlos Castaneda, the shaman guy, he used to say, well, actually, his teacher, Don Juan, used to say, death is your advisor. And he used to say, keep death over your left shoulder. And what he meant is, imagine the Grim Reaper, right? The death is right behind you on your left side. His head, the skull is right there behind you. If you just turned around, you would see the Grim Reaper. He said, keep the Grim Reaper right there and let death be your advisor. So at all times, I think, well, death is right behind me. So what should I do now? What should I do now? Death is always right behind me. So what should I do now? So it's quite an intense way to think about it. That's also, I just want to say, that's what's called a memento mori, which is people used to keep a skull around with them in their house. Memento mori meaning reminder of death. And I believe it is I can't remember, it's some secret society or military order. I can't remember which, but their motto is time flies, remember death. I can't remember what secret society or military order that is. Their motto is time flies, remember death. And just to reiterate, before I go back to my, let you have the mic back, just reiterating what Miyamoto Musashi said. He said, generally speaking, the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death. And he also said, in order to win a fight, you must fight as though you were already dead. So those two quotes kind of are exactly what you're pointing out, and I really like the way you said that, Ralph.
I'm a huge fan of Carlos Castaneda, and I've read several of his books. It's really cool that you can relate to that.
Huge fan as well. The Gates of Dreaming really opened a lot of doors for me.
I wanted to add some.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add something in regard to somebody was talking about video games and Bushido relationships. So the thing about video games is the one thing that video games and certain activities will always miss completely is that in order to attain some level in any sort of martial arts training, you have to have what is called Kiken Taichi, at least in Bushido, or the art of the sword, and in Kendo, Ki is for energy, Ken is sword, and body is the... So Kiken Taichi is the mind, body, soul action of your movement against an opponent. Now, if you look at Kendo, you'll notice you'll see a lot of strikes, but there aren't any points. It's because there's something where that's so important about Kiken Taichi is that Kendo has to have a beauty. There's no beauty in the strike, and there's no technique, and there's no art to the form of you entering into the center to overcome the center. It's just hitting, then it's just swinging, then it's just boxing, and there's no art. But just by stepping in and just in without any of those formula, which video games are always going to miss. There is no body. You get to really get the flavor and the experience of why life is so important is because you receive as you give.
Well,
The video
you can look at a lot of the martial arts nowadays, or even going back to the 1900s, and it's evolved. Obviously, it's become more comprehensive type striking scenario where there's a lot of mix of everything. Some of the best hand-picked areas of all the friggin' best, like Roman Greco wrestling, regular wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then you start mixing boxing on top of that, or even Taekwondo, and you start getting into the best backgrounds of some of the best fighters that have ever existed.
I got disconnected. Were you talking to me? So,
Yeah, I was.
I didn't hear the question. I just came back. Like the app just shut off and then it just put me back in. What did you say? I'm
I
sorry.
was saying the evolution of martial arts. All
Yeah.
right, so MMA has become the handpicked best things of every other martial arts. All right, around. So I said Roman Greco wrestling, uh, regular wrestling like Olympic style and stuff like that. Some of the Muay Thai boxing guys that in the MMA that have a crisp jab. Uh, you know what I mean? They could do the flying Superman punch like just like a whip. You know what I mean? Like it's extended the martial arts period. The ideology behind it should never change. The style should always be like what is it? Don't don't be the glass, be the water. So if you pour it into a multi-dimensional glass, it can be the water, be able to absorb the shape.
I
Hello?
mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure what else I can add other than
Well,
that.
I'm just saying, just don't limit yourself to one style, right?
Yeah,
Be a jack of all trades.
yeah, I guess in the world of kendo, it's not just the art form, it's a way of life. So that's why it's never in the Olympics. It's not, even though they do have competition, it's just part of this, it's part of the lifestyle. And it's kind of the same thing as I Ching. A lot of people don't know about I Ching, but I Ching is not an oracle. It happens to be a lifestyle too. And it talks about planets, I found out too, learning from this guy from China. But kendo is a lifestyle, and so you incorporate that respect, honor to yourself to anything you do when you learn about some of this. I guess the essence of the Bushido, you carry it to other systems.
So we're gonna give one more turn here. Does anyone want to say anything on the? Well, I want to very much for attending this event. I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank
You're roboting.
okay, one second. Sorry if I'm roboting. Okay.
You're still roboting.
Sorry about that. Am I back?
I think so.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to thank everybody for attending. Thank Tech and Weaver for recording. Thank you, Blue Steel, for your contributions regarding Kendo and EI. And thank you again to everybody for being in the round table, for listening to me ramble on. And yeah, I appreciate y'all. So find us on the Roundtable Discord server, theroundtablediscord.com, Google Roundtable Discord, or find us through Politics and Conspiracy on Discord. We're on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Yeah, man. And tomorrow we have a very exciting event that nobody should miss. It is a bizarre situation. So today, a gentleman comes into the chat room and he starts asking a bunch of questions about the rules. So I figure he's just another, annoying, Nazi or something. He wants to say something stupid that we're going to have to ban. But it's a little more complicated. It turns out he wants to know if he can talk about cannibalism as long as it's under the legal pretext of not being illegal. And we talked to this guy, and he essentially is asserting straight-facedly that he is a cannibal and he eats human bodies. And he's going into great detail about how he obtains these bodies from morgues, how he's found a legal loophole for him to do this, how he consumes the bodies, how he cooks them. So very bizarre, and he's telling me this, and I go, stop, man. I hope you're not telling the truth, and I assume you're trolling or something, but it's very elaborate. So I said, if you want to do this, do it as a podcast. So he's going to do it tomorrow. He's going to be interviewed, not by me, but by Surprise. And this is going to be the first of a series of interviews carried out by Surprise, which will also be a first of a series of interviews or episodes simply done by other people without my involvement. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it'll be Surprise interviews an actual cannibal. That'll be happening tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, so do not miss it. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Let's jump out to a regular channel. And anyone who has a good recording of this podcast, I think Weaver, it shall be, please upload it to YouTube. And thank you, Tech and everybody. Just upload your recordings to RT Recorded. Thanks so much, guys. And yeah, let's just jump up to Roundtable 1 now for some chill out time.